So maybe we could try to get started. It's an interesting workshop. We have all the in-person attendees are still coming slowly, but this is the one we have a gigantic amount of people online. It is by far the biggest a number of registrants, almost over 5,000 registrants. I have no idea how many are actively online. So, but it's clearly an indication of interest of the industry in the use of modeling and artificial intelligence in generic drug development and product life cycle management, and how it will be applied to being applied in regulatory review and regulatory sciences. So first of all, welcome everybody. I'm Anna Schwendemann. I'm co-director of Center for Research in Complex Generics with Jim Polly. The center was started in 2020, and our main mission is to increase access to safe and effective generic drugs through advancing infrastructure and interview education, like this workshop right now, and also some joint research between industry, academia, and the FDA. And so hopefully this workshop, among with many others, increase our dialogue between the industry and the regulators through our help. So we have three primary missions. One is infrastructure, in which we are interviewing the companies to understand what are the main issues in development of complex generic products, technical issues, regulatory issues, and some others. Based on what we find, we decide what are the workshops together with the FDA for next year. And then we also do some collaborative work together, so involving both academia, industry, and the agency. Through our interview process, we interview many companies. Here their names, many players in generic industry, but also some suppliers and trade organizations that impact development of generic products. So this is unusual workshop. This is the first one we are doing in AI component. We've done some others in modeling and simulations, and how is AI involved could be involved in the development of life cycle of complex generic products. And it starts maybe with the formulation development early on. Some people use AI in design of active pharmaceutical ingredients, but in reality, in formulation, it's very useful. There is a lot of analytical characterization and looking at AI through all the analytical data. I think a lot of talks here in the use of AI in bioequivalence and modeling. And then later on in the control of manufacturing process, in review, and inspections. So when regulatory submissions are sent to the agency, AI could be used in finding out what the deficiencies are, and then also what are the inconsistencies potentially within the submission, to look at the inspection, to find out if there is any trends in inspection and in the products post-market surveillance, some apply of AI to real-world evidence after the product is approved. So there is many applications, and we don't even know where the field will be going, but this is a good time to start. So this is our first workshop as a center to start looking into it. So far, the center performed 19 workshops from the start. We had over 38,000 registered. After this one, with 5,000 registered right now, we're going to really be much more, reach much higher number of people. So I hope it goes smoothly. And please enjoy everybody who are here in person. It's a very unique group because you get to do some in-person activities. There are, sorry. There is an upcoming workshop in November in Advancing Science in Regulation of Ophthalmic Products. It's November 19-20, right here again. So any of you online who are working in ophthalmics, please remember, and its registration is now will be open. There are next year quite a number of workshops planned. You could see them, and we also post them all online. Some of the research topics that we did jointly with FDA historically over the past 5 years. And here we are. So the center is co-led by Jim Pauly and myself. Jim at the University of Maryland, I'm University of Michigan, and Visha Krishnan is Associate Director. So everybody know her, and also Dana and Jen. They're instrumental in getting all the workshops running smoothly. If you want to keep up with everything that is happening, please join us at this YouTube channel. 3 to 4 weeks after this workshop, we will post presentations all on the YouTube channel. Website is fully searchable. All the FDA generic research could be found there, presentation uploaded. Please connect to us on LinkedIn. If you connected to the center on LinkedIn, this is how you will know all the upcoming workshops and agendas. We are very grateful for this workshop, for members of our planning committee. We had a lot of members from the FDA, Lucy, Meng, who it's too many to mention, but we are very grateful. There was a lot of work done. And then also from the industry, we have people from Teva, from A2AI, Certara, Dr. Reddy's, Cipla, and Simulation Plus, and some people from academia, and industry. So we are very helpful, very grateful for everybody who were involved in the planning of this workshop. It's one of a kind for us, and it's highly unusual. With that, thank you for participation. I think it's Lei Zhang will give an opening remark for the FDA, and we're hoping for a productive today. Thank you.
Okay, you can tell I'm not Mr. Jeremy Walsh, and due to some reason, he cannot come in person to deliver this opening remarks, but I'm very delighted to be here to welcome you to this workshop. So thank you, Anna. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all the participants, both in the room as well as online around the world. I'm Lei Zhang, Deputy Director of the Office of Research and Standards at FDA. I'm very delighted to be here to welcome you to this groundbreaking FDA CRCG workshop on modeling and artificial intelligence in generic drug development and product lifecycle management, regulatory insights, and future trends. By looking at the name, you can see the scope of this workshop. Today makes a pivotal moment as we gather here to explore how AI can transform the generic drug landscape. The enthusiasm for this workshop is remarkable. As you heard from Anna, we have nearly 100 people on site, as well as more than 5,000 people registered online, demonstrate the critical importance of AI in this field. Generic drug serves as the backbone of our healthcare system, representing over 90% prescription in the United States, but only accounting for 12% of the spending for the prescription drugs. In 2024 alone, generic drugs saved the US healthcare system nearly $450 billion, which is a testament to the importance to our healthcare accessibility and affordability. The landscape has transformed dramatically since the Hatch-Waxman amendments about 41 years ago. In 1984, generic drugs represent only about 19% of the prescription drugs, with primarily simple small molecules. Today, we all know we face increasing complex products that challenge our traditional development approaches. This evolution is not only reflected in the formation or establishment of the Center for Research on Complex Generics, CRCG, but also in the Generic Drug User Fee Amendments funded science and research initiatives under GDUFA. So on this slide, you can see recently FDA published FY 2026 GDUFA Science and Research Priority Initiatives. We publish these initiatives every year since GDUFA, which include the development of methods for generics to address impurities such as nitrosamines, enhancing the efficiency of equivalence approaches for complex active ingredients, complex dosage forms and formulations, complex routes of delivery, complex drug device combination products, improving the efficiency of BE approaches for oral and parenteral products, as well as facilitating the utility of model integrated evidence to support the demonstrating of BE. As most relevant to today's workshop, you can also see we have the expanding the use of artificial intelligence and machine learning tools. We are witnessing the unprecedented acceleration in AI adoption globally. For example, as of late 2025, ChatGPT has around 800 million weekly active users globally, up from which is about 400 million earlier in the year. You can showing the doubling just in months. In 2025, global spending on AI infrastructure is projected around $375 billion, with a possible rise to $500 billion in 2026. But this is not just technology trends. AI is also fundamentally reshaping how we approach drug discovery, development, and patient care across the entire pharmaceutical pipeline. The interest in today's workshop demonstrates this momentum, as you heard, with more than 5,000 registrations, reflecting the community's recognition of AI transformative potential. As we embrace advancements in AI and machine learning, we're exploring how these technologies can enhance our regulatory processes while streamlining the scientific rigor and ensures product safety and efficacy. FDA is advancing public health through the AI innovation initiatives. FDA has published a draft guidance on considerations for the use of artificial intelligence to support regulatory decision-making for drug and biological products earlier this year, which provides a risk-based framework for establishing and evaluating AI model credibility. FDA has also released a discussion paper on using artificial intelligence and machine learning in the development of drug and biological products to communicate with our stakeholders, as well as to promote mutual learning and discussions. We are not just talking about it, we are implementing it. As you may have seen from the news, FDA is rolling out transformative AI initiatives, including AI-assisted scientific review pilot in May 2025, as well as in June, the ALSA, the agency-wide generative AI tool to optimize performance for the American people. From comprehensive database construction use large language models to improving ANDA submissions efficiency through automated screening tools, you will hear we are committed to modernizing our AI approach. Most relevant to today's audience, our GDUFA Science Research Priority Initiative specifically include the expanding use of AI and machine learning tools. This has been part of our research priorities since FY 2021, which demonstrate our sustained commitment to integrate those technologies into generic drug development and evaluation. As you heard later in this workshop from Dr. Rob Lionberger, ORS has been investing in AI and machine learning research since 2018 to drive innovation and adoption of these emerging technologies. We all admit AI is a hot topic. What sets this AI workshop apart from other AI workshops that you may attend? What makes this workshop unique is its complete product lifecycle management approach. We are not just focusing on isolated applications. We are examining AI integration from early development through post-market surveillance, specifically tailored to complex generic and new drug development challenges. And you will hear directly from FDA and EMA on evolving regulatory frameworks, examining regulatory perspectives from global agencies. We are bringing together regulatory scientists, practitioners, technology providers, and academic researchers to address AI within our entire pharmaceutical ecosystem and the practical application of AI in streamlining workflows and innovative AI and modeling approaches to facilitate drug development. This isn't about current applications alone. We are also exploring emerging regulatory frameworks and future trends. You will learn later in this workshop, the 4 major workshop sessions are designed to address these key objectives. Over the next 2 days, we aim to advance understanding of global regulatory frameworks for responsible AI integration. You will see real-world examples of AI streamlining workflows, from regulatory submission preparations to product development and model development. We will explore how AI enhances efficiency, accuracy, and cost effectiveness while improving drug product quality. Particularly exciting is how AI and the machine learning approaches are augmenting traditional pharmacometrics, system pharmacology, and translational modeling. Most importantly, we are creating the opportunities for meaningful dialogues between all stakeholders on best practices and implementation strategies. Let me share what we expect you to take away from this workshop, which is those are the concrete learning outcomes that will directly benefit your work. We expect you to gain the regulatory intelligence with current thinking from both FDA and EMA on AI integration requirements and expectations for submissions. This isn't theoretical guidance. It's practical insights into what regulators are looking for. We also expect you to leave with actionable strategies for incorporating AI tools into drug development workflows, from formulation optimization to regulatory pathway streamlining. These are the blueprints that can be adapted for your own organizations. We expect you to expand your professional networks with connections to regulatory scientists, industry leaders, technology providers, and academic researchers, working with the intersection of the AI and pharmaceutical development. These relationships will become invaluable resources as as you navigate the AI implementation after this workshop. Most importantly, we expect you to gain future-ready experience with the insights into emerging trends, such as digital twins, generative AI applications, and evolving landscape of AI in pharmaceutical innovation, and will help you to anticipate and prepare for what's coming next. For people in the room, in-person attendees, you will gain practical experience through mock case studies and collaborative problem-solving sessions that will simulate real regulatory scenarios. The future we are building is one where AI makes FDA assessments more consistent, enables sophisticated quantitative approach, and help industry deliver high-quality submissions. AI will augment, not replace, human expertise, making our experienced staff's knowledge more sustainable and impactful, while addressing the evolving regulatory landscape that shapes safe and effective integration of AI technologies into the pharmaceutical innovation. For generic drugs specifically, AI represents a transformative opportunity to maintain our sector's critical role in healthcare accessibility while meeting the challenges of increasing complexity and the need for continued efficiency improvements. I encourage all participants, whether you are joining virtually or in person, to engage actively. Your insights will help us collectively advance responsible AI integration in generic drug development, ensuring we continue to serve patients with safe, effective, and affordable medications. Finally, I would like to thank CRCG and all FDA staff who have worked tirelessly to organize this workshop. It took a village to get this workshop organized. Especially, I would like to thank Dr. Meng Hu and Dr. Lucy Fang from ORS OGD. Again, welcome to this FDA CRCG AI workshop. Let's make the next 2 days productive, enlightening, and transformative for our industry and the patients we serve. Thank you. I'm going to turn over to Lucy.
Thank you, Lei, for that very inspiring opening remarks. Good morning. My name is Lucy Fang from FDA. On behalf of the whole planning committee, I want to welcome you to our workshop on modeling and AI in generic drug development and product lifecycle management. In session 1, we will kick off our workshop with global perspectives on the AI in the pharmaceutical regulation. We will hear from 3 distinguished speakers representing different aspects of this global transformation. Dr. Gabriel from FDA's Office of Medical Policy will open by presenting FDA's risk-based credibility assessment framework for AI in the regulatory decision-making, incorporating extensive stakeholder engagement and real-world case studies. Dr. Luis Pinheiro from the EMA will then present the HMA/EMA AI workflow, covering the EMA's comprehensive approach, including their AI reflection paper and the risk-based framework for AI machine learning use throughout the medicinal product lifecycle. Finally, Dr. Robert Lionberger from the FDA's Office of Generic Drugs will discuss the transformative impact of AI on generic drug regulation, highlighting FDA's deployment of ELSA, advancing workflow in automation, and the enhanced regulatory consistency. Together, These presentations will provide valuable insights into how global regulatory harmonization is evolving in the AI era. Without further ado, let's welcome Dr. Gabriel Inns from FDA.
Perfect. Thank you. Thanks everyone for being here. Thank you to all the organizers, OGD, especially Lucy, who has really put everything together. As Lei said, it has taken a village and wrangling cats. So we really appreciate that. You'll also notice that my face is a little long, and I have an infant, a 1-month-old and a 2-year-old. So if I stumble, you'll have to forgive me. For this and other reasons, I have to disclaim that these are my own thoughts and should not be representing the FDA or the U.S. federal government. And today, really, the mission of this talk is to give some insight into our draft guidance, which Lei had talked a little bit about earlier, give a little bit of the foundations for that guidance, a little glimmer into what the guidance says, talk about the risk-based framework for drug development and biologics, and also, if time allows, talk about a little bit of the docket comments that we received from our public docket. That was from January to April of this year, which has given us a lot of insight into what industry, all of you, interested parties, you name it, veterinary professionals, healthcare providers, patient advocacy, developers, everyone really has joined in to give support and also to help us better understand how they're seeing AI in their development of drug and biologics. Also, something I want to highlight is that this guidance, which we're about to go over, really highlights the pace of FDA and the ability for FDA to come together as a one FDA. This is the work of many, many months and the collaboration of 7 major office centers across the... We're good. I'm still introing. Sorry. There's no slide, so don't worry about that. Really highlights the benefits of FDA working together in collaboration. So what kind of propelled this guidance? We've been seeing many submissions with AI or machine learning, whether that's an IND, an NDA, an ANDA, BLA, or otherwise, come into CDER, and this is just CDER. Ever since we've been tracking in 2016, you'll have some of our CDRH colleagues also on the panel. Dr. Mir Jacobs will talk, and CDRH has vast experience with AI long before CDER. I believe their first applications were in the mid-90s, if you can believe it. So we're relatively new, but we've been seeing this exponential increase in the use of AI and ML, which is unsurprising, especially given some of the statistics that Lei has just presented on. And we received over 1,000 submissions with AI. This is CDER. The numbers don't quite reflect this, but when we update this figure at the end of the year, you'll see 2025 is on that same trajectory up and to the right. We've had a lot of different examples of AI in submissions. You'll see AI in patient selection, outcome specification, confounding adjustment. We've also seen a lot with digital twins, external controls, synthetic controls, and post-market safety monitoring. So all of this together, has really propelled us. Again, I'm in the Office of Medical Policy, but this takes a village to do a lot of this work. This has propelled us to have discussion papers, to have expert workshops. Back from 2019, we started a policy working group with AI, and all the way to January of this year, we've had discussion papers, and we've had the release of this guidance. And this previous year, actually in 2024, we also had a city workshop, which was to discuss how artificial intelligence is really playing a part in drug and biological development. And we had the second iteration of this actually just last week, and a lot of people here had attended that, and we're hoping to learn from both this conference today as well as the workshop yesterday, helping us gain additional perspective from industry, which we may not have captured during the public docket comment. So why did we publish this AI guidance? Obviously, we've been seeing a huge upswing of the use of AI and ML. It's been exploding our lives, of course, but also in drug development paradigm, it's been used quite a bit. Essentially, the guidance is a way for us to talk to ourselves, help us standardize our thinking, help us really have the conversation internally, as well as being able to set expectations for industry and have a dialogue with industry. Even though this is kind of the guidance is sort of one way, we get the dialogue through this public docket comment. So FDA needs were, how do we determine if AI use is appropriate for a specific context of use? And I'll get into the context of use in a little bit. And how do we determine AI model risk? How do we evaluate outputs from AI? And how do we determine and communicate what we need from industry in a regulatory submission? And this is paired with industry needs, and industry in this specific instance really has to do with the larger industry, the larger interested parties. That's patient advocacies, sponsors, technology and biotech companies, AI developers, patient advocacy groups, many of the people who actually had provided comments in the public docket comment. Industry needs were some of which we've outlined here. How will we know what is in or out of scope of FDA's regulatory oversight? How will we know what FDA will accept and if they will accept our AI uses in our specific drug development pathway? How much information and data will the FDA require for AI use? And how do we engage with FDA on AI uses? And these questions, along with the FDA needs, again, helped promote the creation of this guidance. And the purpose of this guidance, which is the considerations for the use of artificial intelligence to support regulatory decision-making for drug and biological products, really provides a risk-based framework to establish and evaluate the credibility of an AI model output for a particular context of use. And this is really the first of its kind AI guidance that CDER has developed. So we really wanted to sort of set this foundation from the bottom up. And we have to define some of these really pointed terms. First of all is, what is credibility? Credibility is trust. This trust is established through the collection of evidence in the performance of an AI model, particular for a context of use or COU. And so then this begets the question, what is a context of use? And that's the specific role and scope of the AI model to address a question of interest. We were careful to really point out what is in scope of this guidance and what is out of scope. In scope is the use of AI to produce information or data intended to support regulatory decision-making regarding safety, effectiveness, or quality for drugs and biological products. And also, just as important as what's out of scope, drug discovery, for the most part, is not regulated under FDA. There are some exceptions, which I won't get into. And also operational efficiencies, which are unrelated to the patient safety or drug quality, reliability. And some of these include internal workflows, resource allocation, or drafting and writing of a regulatory submission or protocols. We want to outline these 4 main points, and I'll really highlight the first, which is this introduction to CDER and our community to the risk-based credibility assessment framework consisting of 7 steps to establish and evaluate the credibility of AI model outputs for a specific context of use with activities that are commensurate, and this is important, commensurate to the model risk. Second, we review the lifecycle maintenance required for AI models used in the context where performance may change over time. You may see model drift, data drift. You may see that there are some models that are static, some models that are dynamic and adaptable. And we want it to be really specific in terms of what we are looking for in this context, especially in the areas including pharmaceutical manufacturing or pharmacovigilance that has most salience in this regard. Also, and we can't stress this enough, and you'll see this in many of our guidance, and when you come talk to FDA or through some of these listening sessions or workshops, we'll say this over and over again, that we ask you to come talk to us. Come talk to us early, come talk to us often. We strongly encourage that you all come and speak with us about your product in the context of the specific drug development program. And when we can have this dialogue to talk about what the model risk is, and more importantly, the model risk is supposed to facilitate the conversation about what the credibility assessment plan would look like, what are some of FDA's expectations, what would we need to help prove to us that this AI technology is doing what is purporting for it to do. And then last, the comprehensive documentation requirements, including credibility assessment plans and reports, which really highlights what goes into the model development, training data, evaluation processes, performance metrics that are all tailored to the specific context of use. And as I alluded to earlier, our 7 steps are really the meat and potatoes of this guidance. You'll see these steps here. I'll really go into the first 3 with an exemplary, an exemplar to discuss just how this is really, where the rubber hits the road. How do we really make sure that this is, you can dig your teeth into this with an example. So the example, and this is one of 2 that you'll find in the guidance, but I've picked a more clinically salient example. The other one has to do with manufacturing, noted drug B. This is drug A. Drug A is under development and is associated with a life-threatening drug related to adverse reaction. In previous trials for drug A, all participants went through 24-hour inpatient monitoring after dosing due to concerns about this adverse reaction. However, data from these previous trials showed that some participants were at a low risk for adverse reactions. In a new study, the sponsor is exploring a strategy to use an AI model to stratify patients for 24-hour inpatient monitoring based on their risk for experiencing this adverse reaction. In this sponsor's proposal, participants with low risk for adverse reaction will be sent home for outpatient monitoring after dosing, as opposed to those with categorized high risk who would be an inpatient. For this example, the question of interest would be which participants can be considered low risk and do not need inpatient monitoring after dosing. This is the first step, and this is really important to help define what the AI model is doing. Again, which participants can be considered low risk and therefore do not need inpatient monitoring after dosing. Next, we need to define the context of use to help sort of put rails or really help keep our arms around what this AI model is doing. So for this, we're looking at the role and scope, as I alluded to earlier. The role of the AI is to stratify patients, which was high versus low for an adverse health reaction. And then the scope of AI is that only the model will be used to classify these patients, these participants. So with this information, how are we looking at assessing model risk? Model risk in our guidance, we've really set upon 2 axes, 2 features. First, on the x-axis here, you'll see model influence, and on the y-axis, you'll see decision consequence. And this transitions from low to high, where you have low model influence to high, and then low decision consequence to high. And I'll share an example about what these 2 features really represent. So the model influence is essentially how the model will contribute information and what is the context of this information that is being, the information within the context of other evidence that is helping to answer this question. So for this question, only the AI model is determining what the participants are undergoing in terms of their monitoring. And because only the model is doing this, we determine that the model influence is high. Similarly, decision consequence, we define, and this is paraphrased, but loosely, the potential risk of misclassifying patients or misclassifying or getting the AI answer wrong. And in this context, misclassification of a patient's risk status could result in a serious adverse reaction and potentially death. And obviously, this would be of very high decision consequence. And then therefore, together, we note that this would be high model risk. And activities used to establish AI model output credibility should be commensurate with model risk and tailored to the context of use. And the specific activities that we would ask for, commensurate again of this context of use, would be the level of oversight, the stringency of credibility assessments and performance acceptance criteria, risk mitigation strategies, and the type and extent of documentation and details associated with AI use. Okay, now that we have our model risk, then we go to develop a plan to establish AI model credibility. And again, now that we have these first three steps, this is really where we ask for members of the industry, sponsors to come talk to us now that we have something to really talk about, right? We have the question of interest, the context of use, and then the perceived model risk. And this helps us springboard a conversation. In this step 4, we have some specific broader asks. We ask that we describe the model and the model development process. For example, model inputs, architecture features, parameters, rationale, et cetera. What is the development data? What has been used to train or tune the data? If there's a foundational model that was used, what was the foundational model? What versioning of those models were used? How the data were collected and processed and cleaned? And how is this a good fit for its context of use? And again, how was the model trained? What performance metrics were used? And describe some of the calibrations that you've used to help hone your model to be as accurate as possible. And then we would ask for you to describe the model evaluation process. Describe and evaluate the fully trained model and assess its adequacy for the context of use. How was this model tested? What was the validation for this model? And what were the performance metrics you used for helping to understand its performance metrics? And we note that this should be aligned with some of what has already been mentioned in previous guidance with our CDRH colleagues. So we encourage you to look at their guidances as well. Again, they've had a lot of experience, as you can imagine, in AI and devices. So we often work with them to, of course, create this guidance, but also during our consultation processes, during policy making, we have a very good relationship with them. And then steps 5 to 7, execute the plan, again, preferably after engaging. It doesn't have to be engaging, but we feel that this actually takes a lot of the guesswork out of, what would the FDA think about this? What would the evidence be needed for the commensurate of the model risk? What documentation is required? And then step 7 is determine the adequacy of the AI model for its context of use. Can I have a quick, I don't see a time check, but before I get into commenters, I was just curious how much time I have left. 2 minutes. Okay, so I will run through this. So this is a brief outline of what we've received from our public docket comments. This is the really myriad of commenters that we've seen. And as I discussed earlier, you'll see that although, and understandably so, the lion's share, the majority of commenters are from regulated industry, about 54 of the 98. We received comments from a number of different organizations and professionals. Similarly here, we had many comments, 1,455, and this again takes a lot of work by others in the Office of Medical Policy and beyond to help categorize these, help triage them, help understand how we can best consider and address. We consider all the comments, but how do we address some of the ones that we feel are most important into the finalization of this guidance? And you'll see here, I can use my mouse, okay, oh, perfect. Oh, it's a little laggy. It's okay. Again, most of the comments outside of general comments were in this risk-based credibility assessment framework 472, which makes the most sense, being that that is the meat and potatoes again of our guidance. And you'll see here, I won't go through all of the major themes and what the public docket comments had sort of elucidated and unearthed for us, but we've been really asked to provide additional clarity to the guidance in terms of the scope and terminology so that we can have a shared language. We were also asked, and this is unsurprising because we get asked this a lot, to provide use case examples, again, so that really people can sink their teeth and really have some understanding through examples of how this guidance can be operationalized. We've also been asked to develop some good principles for AI use in drug development and biological product development. And then we've, of course, had this landscape of comments having to do with model development and life cycle, spanning from being more specific to being broader to being, what models does this guidance cover? How do we use certain models? As you can imagine, large language models are a huge point of discussion, and we really saw those in the public docket comments as well. Again, it really can't thank enough the number of people and representing offices that have contributed to this work. We're currently going through all of these comments one by one. We have a working group of about 50 people, which you can imagine is a huge task to try to really hone and benefit the draft guidance to make it more and more useful for industry. Thank you.
Thank you, Gabriel. That's a really great presentation. Our next speaker is Dr. Luis Pinheiro from EMA. He will present virtually.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Nope. Can you not hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Here we go. I don't see, the room doesn't seem to hear me.
Yes.
Oh, perfect. Okay, thank you so much. Give me 1 second to get my presentation up. And that is here, sharing. Perfect. I hope you can see my presentation. I'll take silence as agreement. And first of all, just to thank the organization for inviting me. I'm really happy to be here. I'm calling from Den Haag in the Netherlands, very close to where the European Medicines Agency is sitting. The talk today from my side is a European journey, how the heads of Medicines Agency and the European Medicines Agency AI work plan is shaping guidance and use of artificial intelligence. And in the decision to what present, we decided to go for a more broader presentation than what we initially thought. There is an AI reflection paper that we have produced and presented and published in September 2024, last year. And essentially, in our view, that reflection paper and the FDA guidance are largely overlapping with some differences. But we didn't want to do a sort of where's Wally and go through the differences. So what I bring to you today is a broader view, a more helicopter view of the activities that we're conducting in the European medicines regulatory space. My name is Luis Pinheiro. I've been introduced, but just to give you another piece of information, I am the lead rapporteur for the AI work plan. Okay, and just to give you a disclaimer and have no conflict of interest. Moving on to the vision, the European Medicines Regulatory Network's vision for artificial intelligence. And just before going there, actually, to explain what it is, what the European Medicines Regulatory Network is, and it is the combination of the European Medicines Agency, the national competent authorities, and the European Commission. So our vision for AI is for a regulatory system leveraging AI to harness systems efficiency, increase insights into data, and strengthen decision-making for the benefit of, let's go back, for the benefit of public and animal health. Now, the drivers at the European Medicines Regulatory Network, the AI drivers are three. The first one is to regulate AI in the medicine's life cycle. Essentially, we want to be effective regulators of AI. We want to enable safe and responsible use of AI in the medicine's life cycle for the benefit of human and animal health. And then we have two others which are more internally facing. and they're around using artificial intelligence in our own processes or for healthcare analytics. So on one hand, the process analytics, which is about productivity, efficiency, automation, digitalization, and then healthcare data analytics, where the purpose is more around increasing insights into data, into healthcare data using artificial intelligence. Now, how are we going to get there? We have a network data steering group that oversees a work plan called Data and AI Work Plan. It is online and available if you search for it. It's very simple, and the SG Data and AI Work Plan will take you there. And if you look at the key priorities for 2025, it's quite a busy slide here, but you can look at them from a row perspective. And starting with the first one, it's around strategy and governance. So for those of you that are aware, there will be a new pharma legislation in Europe. So that was included in strategy and governance and the AI Act. There's an element on the network data strategy and the data analytics data strategy, which is a different thing. Then in the middle row, it's around data analytics, interoperability, and artificial intelligence, including continuing ongoing initiatives of Darwin EU and a clinical study raw data, the medicines master data implementation and artificial intelligence. And then finally on change management, it's about communication, training, guidance, and stakeholder engagement. I'm moving to the next slide, and just to give you a little bit of an explanation why sometimes the slides move forward, is because it's on a timer. So apologies, I'm just being a little bit slower than the timer I had set up. Okay, so the NDSG work plan is organized in 6 work streams. There's strategy and governance, data analytics, artificial intelligence, data interoperability, stakeholder engagement and change management, and guidance and international initiatives. All of those bullets you see in these boxes, they are what we call swim lanes, and they have specific activities under them. And for artificial intelligence, we have 4: guidance, policy, and product support, tools and technologies, collaboration and change management, and experimentation. Now, looking at the pillars one by one, guidance, policy, and product support is about continuous support to products, the development of appropriate guidance for the use of AI in the life cycle of a medicine, and also, uniquely probably to the EU setting, the implementation of the EU AI Act. Now, below that is tools and technology, and that is about identifying and providing frameworks across the network. This is the European network of medicines regulators, to use AI tools to increase efficiency, enhance understanding and analysis of data, and support decision-making. On the top right, collaboration and change management, and this is about initiatives designed to continuously develop capacity and capability of our network, partners, and stakeholders to keep ahead of the evolving field of AI. And finally, on experimentation, this is about ensuring a structured approach to experimentation across the network to accelerate insights. So one of the key initiatives I mentioned really at the start of this presentation was the AI reflection paper. And this is somewhat equivalent to the FDA draft guidance. We published it back in September 2024. It is not formal guidance for us. And the way we presented it is reflecting this. It is presented in a conceptual and exploratory approach. So if you look at the table of contents just briefly, and I do agree that this might be a struggle for some, you'll see that there's an element of general considerations, then the AI in the life cycle of medicinal products. And you'll see that we do start, for instance, with drug discovery. And so those eagle-eyed of you will see drug discovery there and see a discrepancy, well, a difference as respect to the FDA guidance. We're in agreement that this is mostly seen as a process that is at sponsors' risks, and we don't regulate the space very much, but we provide considerations on possible downstream impacts, and we carved out a very specific niche situation where we would like to see information on the AI system that was used in drug discovery. So I'm flagging that as one of the potential differences that you will see. And then there's a number of other elements in the life cycle of the medicine. And then to flag also the regulatory interactions, really at the middle there of the table of contents, the regulatory interactions. Again, here we also focus on early interactions, and that is just the nature of AI and its fast-paced evolution. Model capabilities are growing extremely fast, so having an early engagement with regulators is important, and we welcome if stakeholders do that. And then for the remaining elements of the table of contents, I think that would be sort of almost banal elements on technical aspects and so on. So the objective of the reflection paper was to provide considerations on the use of AI and machine learning in the life cycle of medicinal products. And at the time, it described the experience of the EMA, while we acknowledge actually that scientific knowledge is fast evolving. It should be read in coherence with both legal requirements and overarching new principles on AI, data protection, and medicines regulation. And as I said before, this paper is not a regulatory guidance document. Now, moving from those key, actually, no, I think I've done that. Moving from those, from the that key initiative, I think there's two others that I would like to flag. And the first one is on the guiding principles on the use of large language models. And this is actually something we did internally. The guiding principles were an answer to the explosion of large language models that appeared in sort of 2022, late 2022, 2023, and so on. And a number of staff of the regulatory authorities do use some of these tools to do, at times, menial activities. But we wanted to ensure that they did it safely and responsibly. And thus, about 20 people across Europe helped draft these guiding principles on the use of large language models in regulatory science and for medicines regulatory activities. So again, this is an internal thing for the regulatory authorities. It is available online, but it also illustrates a bit our approach across the board in terms of artificial intelligence, which is that whereas you have this big document, can't see it here, obviously, because I'm just screenshotting the first page, but it's about 12 pages. And we acknowledge that it's a big document, 12 pages, and we also acknowledge a lot of information fatigue currently on the artificial intelligence aspects. So in that respect, we decided to do a fact sheet, which is on the right-hand side, that has four principles for safe and responsible use of large language models. So this fact sheet is a reduction from the original document. It links back to that document, but essentially presents it in a way that is memorable and that helps colleagues remain safe and effective in their use of large language models. Then finally, just on the two key initiatives on the observatory, you might have seen if you've been to the European Medicines Agency website, there is an AI observatory in our work plan, and that observatory is now publishing on a yearly basis our experience with artificial intelligence, both in the perspective of the regulatory space. So as regulators, broadly, what are we seeing coming through? And as users of artificial intelligence for our own process efficiency or insights into data, we've also published that, and this is available for you if you want to go to the EMA website. And then wrapping up, I think it's also important to recognize that there is a number of initiatives that we've put together to benefit innovation, to enable innovation. And those can be split into two big pillars. On one hand, stakeholder engagement. We have the annual AI workshops. We'll have one on the 20th and 21st of November this year. We attend symposium scientific meetings where we do come in and try to explain and engage with stakeholders on our thoughts on artificial intelligence in particular. And more recently, we created this group focused on AI with industry stakeholders to have this midterm where you can bring sort of topics which are common to multiple industry stakeholders that for which there was no fora before. And then on the other side here, we have supporting innovation, and that includes things like portfolio technology meetings where there is sort of an informal one-to-one with industry. And quite often, as you can imagine, in the past couple of years, the topics have been increasingly on the use of AI across the medicine's life cycle. We have the quality innovation group, which focus more on the manufacturing side, and then the traditional things you would see, qualification of new methodologies, the innovation task force briefing meetings, and scientific advice. And I'll stop there. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you, Luis, for sharing that EMA's perspective. Our next speaker is Dr. Robert Lionberger. He will share with us his vision on the future of AI in the genetic drug program. Thank you, Rob. Welcome, Rob.
All right, thank you, Lucy, for that introduction. I'm very happy to be here to give you my views on AI specifically for the generic drug industry. And so usually I don't put up a disclaimer thing, but here I really want to make it clear that really I'm talking about the things I've learned from observing how we use AI in the generic drug program and some of my thoughts about the future of that, which I think, really more reflect sort of personal thoughts rather than FDA, certainly FDA has guidances. You can go read that guidances for our positions on things. But this is really to be more reflective on and specifically to the audience for this workshop on how AI use is going to affect generic drug development and review. And I think it's very clear that it's going to have a huge impacts on what we do. Both we as FDA staff who review and evaluate generic drug submissions, but also for you in the generic drug industry as to how you develop generic products in an environment where there's a broader range of AI tools available in an environment, and it's going to have impact on that. And it's important to be thinking about that because of the importance of generic drugs and their impact on public health. And so, as Lucy mentioned in her introduction, one of the things that FDA has done has introduced a tool called ELSA, which is a large language model. But what I think was really innovative and I think surprising and unique and refreshing to me in FDA was sort of made it available immediately to everyone in FDA. I think at FDA we're a lot of like gatekeeping. Can we try this? Can we have one person from every office use this to see if it works? Can we give people instructions on how to use it before we give it to them? But I think the really transformative part here was making this available to all FDA staff to really put this tool in their hands where they can begin to explore how this can make their work faster. And so it's a much more bottom-up approach, which I think is in the long-term pro-innovation to how we use large language models at FDA. And it gives people across FDA experience and understanding that they have access to this tool. I think so. This was, I think, a huge, impactful event this year to roll this out broadly across FDA. And I think that will really have long-term benefits for that and internally as people start building on top of that. And so that's a user perspective. So that's something every person at FDA is doing it. I want to share a little bit about what I've learned and reflected on AI from the perspective of what we do in the Office of Research and Standards. And so especially in our quantitative medicine division that Lucy leads, right? We have a builder culture where we try to actually build models, write code to solve problems and use AI to do this. So really not just sort of like type stuff into somebody else's model, but use them in actual development and production of models. And I want to be reflective on what I've learned from some of those projects and how that's important and I think maybe useful broadly to the industry as a whole and to FDA as we go forward. And certainly, because we've been in the research research organization, and we've had a strong emphasis on predictive modeling, right? And a lot of things that you saw in Gabriel's talk about the AI guidance was really how do you use a model? Like many of those things are things that you would do for any kind of model. Even if it wasn't an AI model, you would still want to say like, is it verified, fit for purpose, and all of those. So there's not, so there's a more continuous transition in there. And certainly in the modeling and data analysis environment, we've been using machine learning approaches for many years before the LLM sort of appearance and popularity. And some of the things we've done from a research perspective is, using machine learning models to predict the likelihood of ANDA submissions for different products. And this can help plan workload. FDA does use tools like this to help adjust our user fee workload, fee structure across. So there's groups at FDA that use this type of approach now in sort of practical business size. We developed some pilot programs to help evaluate and streamline some labor-intensive steps in some of our BE assessment review processes. We and ORS use models a lot, so we're very interested in how you use AI tools to develop models faster. And so one of the things through research collaboration has led to the release of software called PyDarwin. So this helps actually use machine learning to help develop and select population PK models so that you can develop them faster. We also looked at large language models to help understand drug labels. Many things that we do for generic drugs are built on the foundation of the approved brand product. So if tools that can take brand product labeling and information about that brand product and put it into a comprehensive form can be very useful for building efficient tools for some of the generic drug regulatory questions. And so, we've been looking at this and building some of these. So we have some experience in this that's driven some of the things. And, one of the things, when I think about, uses in, in our organization, but you in the generic industry, you're also part of large organizations that want to do things. And, as we looked at this and trying to say, what does it take to get AI tools to reach high reliability? And one of the key parts of that is really having high quality data sets. If you want to do something across the full set of space, you have to have the correct data available for that. And so I think an underrated part of successful AI tool use and development in organizations is making sure that you have the actual underlying data that's reliable for the AI. If you put incomplete data into the AI, you'll get an incomplete answer. If you ask the AI, well, how many times did FDA get a submission like this, but my data is incomplete, it's not going to give you the right answer because your data is wrong. And so really there's a data foundation. And so we've done things, thinking about how we build stronger data foundations for things that we care about quantitative medicine, like PK data sets, and information around formulations and the formulation science to think about how that's the foundation. So I think that's a really important part of the foundation for long-term use of AI tools is really the data sources that have that. And one of the things we've sort of discovered in terms of one of our main actual internal uses of AI tools is actually helping to build the reliability of our own internal data sets. Right, we wanted to say, well, look, we want to have an ability to access all of the PK data sets that have been submitted to us. And many of the older ones are in different formats and different descriptions and different review documents. And if you asked a staff member to go through and, get me those 10,000 studies, right, well, they'd still be working on it. But once you can use AI tools to help digest that and say, well, you can train that and so you can use the AI to build and refine the foundation for the things that will make the AI system work better in the future. So there really is, I think, the big element of bootstrapping here, that we're really at the beginning, and our foundational research will accelerate it, but as the AI models get better, they'll help accelerate also the development of the foundation layers. And when we also said, some of the first questions we asked internally as a research activity is, can AI do something, like a specific task within one of our review processes? And so one that I think maybe we'll talk about later is, what's the maximum daily dose of this product? And usually that's a function of how it's used, described according to an FDA label. And we said, well, can an AI do that? And it turns out to get that answer to be highly accurate, there's a lot of different steps that you have to go through, rather than just simply asking, like, Elsa, what's the maximum daily dose of this drug? That'll lead to an unreliable answer, right? But if you go through a more complicated process of controlling the data, am I looking at the right and most reliable data source? Am I following a set of well-defined rules that FDA has developed internally for this? Am I doing calculations and analysis correctly? Am I reasoning that? Am I putting this whole picture together to summarize? Then you can get to, for an individual task, a very high reliability result that's as good as or better than asking an FDA review staff to do that. And it's, again, one of the things that is more consistent. It sort of guarantees that it's going to follow the rules and provide justification for it. And so this is something, I think, one of the first things we did that really helped us understand, like, the level of effort to get to a high reliability answer to something that you might want to do multiple times. And, I think this is very, enlightening to me, is to understand what you'd have to do. And so in the future, hopefully we'll be able to do more of this and make different parts of our review process more consistent, more efficient. And so sometimes internally you have the discussion with a review staff, like, what's the future of FDA staff if you have AI? Is now that you have an AI assistant, are you going to be able to replace FDA reviewers with the AI? I think the answer here in my talk is completely not. Really, what's the role of the human element here? And as I generally explain to my staff, is role of the human reviewer is to be the responsible person. You're responsible for that decision about an application, your job at FDA, why you're hired by the government, given a position of public trust, is to implement and protect public health through your actions, right? And the AIs are a tool that can do that, but it's really you, the FDA staff, that have that responsibility. And I think that's, then I think sometimes it's just a lot of work that you have to do before you get to the responsibility part. And that's the part that I think the AI can be very effective within our organization as well. And so we expect that in the future, AI humans can do more, but also as humans can do more, then maybe our systems expect more, and our understanding and protection of product quality. I think, to me, as I reflect on years of use of computers, have they ever reduced the number of knowledge workers? Probably not. And so if you think about how few people are involved in the generic drug program, there are about 2,000 people across FDA that support the entire US generic drug supply chain. This is 90% of all prescriptions, $100 billion in relatively low-cost sales, $30 billion in new savings from new approvals every year. If you add up those savings, cumulatively, it's trillions of dollars over the life cycle of the generic drug program. And this is just a tiny, small group of people who are developing this. And so I think in some sense, you can think that our AI assistants that help us do our job more effectively are really needed at this time. But we're also already a very lean organization that's doing these things. And this has also led me to reflect a little bit on what the value of FDA review staff is. And I think one perspective on that is experienced FDA staff are very useful to society as a whole, the whole community of people involved in drug development, because they're broadly knowledgeable about cross-application trends in drug development. Even in my perspective, as having been at FDA for 20 years, still learn from every kind of question that comes up in an application. There's always something that you haven't seen before, even with that level of experience. And I think that for our organization and for other organizations, really use of AI to help really develop that internal expertise and curate it in development will be a critical aspect of how they're used in making organizations highly effective. And I think this holds for companies that are developing generic products as well. Internally, you're developing a wide range of products, trying to do that very efficiently to provide affordable medicines to the American public. The other things that you can do to make that more efficient will be highly valuable. We'll have a session later today on data integrity, and you get to talk through in the in-person session some of the examples there. But one of the ways to think about that is, in the past, problems were found by humans noticing things, either through our review process or our inspection processes. In the future, as you begin to develop AI tools for different parts of our processes, AIs can notice more things and bring them again to human attention. Still, again, and fundamentally, it's going to be that human understanding of a regulatory process that makes our final decisions. But the AI tools can really transform how we're doing that, what we're doing that, and what things we're looking at. One question that's probably coming from industry as well is, will AI approve our ANDA approval times? And my answer to that is, if you want to think about what will approve your approval time, think about what the limiting factor is. Right? Is it that you're not being approved because there's patents, there's exclusivities, there's a problem with your facilities? 80% of the ANDAs currently have first cycle deficiencies. Is time spent by the FDA reviewer currently the limiting step in this? So I would expect what you'd first see as FDA begins to use AI more during our review processes is you actually see more consistency in the FDA reviews. But if you want to get to a future state where AI use does improve and reduce the time to and availability, then I think that's part of the other side of the question is, how can applicants use AI tools to improve their quality of their submissions? And I think that's part of the value of the CRGC workshop of engaging of the engagement between FDA staff and industry in doing that. Because I think that as you in the generic industry are able to use AI tools to improve the quality and consistency of your own submissions, right, that's something that then can have an impact on how fast FDA can approve them. But again, as we move toward a future where the analysis are done in a more transparent way, then there's maybe a way that you can understand more clearly, well, what is FDA looking for? And know ahead of time, it's my submission meet those standards as well. That's not something that's a secret, right? FDA standards are not secret and individual, they're public, reflected in our guidances and our expectations. And hopefully we have a system where perhaps in the future it's easier to know if your application is going to be acceptable from the beginning or not, based on public shared understanding of what high quality regulatory applications look like. But there are other impacts of AI on generic drug development. And some of these come from our scientific understanding of that. And I think in the generic industry, most of the focus is on product and formulation development, right? The generic industry is not doing new clinical studies. That's done generally through new drug development processes. And so at what point do we get to the place where machine learning tools, AI tools, are better and faster at developing drug formulations? And part of the scientific part is can you lead to models and approaches that lead to better prediction of the critical formulation attributes? And these can be even more important for complex generics, where the product has to do more complicated things, but even for simpler generics that have to dissolve in the GI tract for drug absorption. If you have a good understanding of these products, then you can develop products faster. And I think, in the past, maybe there are sort of companies had formulation scientists who really had individual knowledge, and they had some institutional knowledge. Well, we think this usually works. I think as we move the sort of field of formulation development forward, then many of these things can be done in a more systematic way and integrated into quantitative medicine approaches where then you have a better understanding of what the bioavailability ought to be. And again, I mentioned before, submission development, that using AI tools to have higher quality submissions is something that will be really important for the generic industry if we want to have a future that leads to faster access to products. And we've seen through our research program that pharmaceutical science, clinical pharmacology can identify clinical, places where clinical trials can be reduced. And this has especially been important for complex generics, where we've moved to Q3 and in vitro approaches in place of clinical endpoint studies. And this is really a part of the industry where I think you're going to be seeing more products in the future. So the future of the generic industry, complex generics, again, are places where this more advanced formulation science can be more useful, and there's maybe less experience in the past about that in the industry themselves. And just to conclude, I went through and thought a little bit about some of our science and research priorities that we engage with and develop collectively with the generic industry through our public workshops, and thought about the different ways that AI-based tools can help address some of those challenges. And so one of the areas our research priorities is impurities, with a lot of the current challenges being related to nitrosamine risk assessments, right? And certainly there's a lot of work in computational toxicology to help understand the potential risk of novel and new nitrosamine-related impurities that maybe don't have as much clinical data available. Also thinking about ways that if there are reformulations, are reduced BE studies needed based on understanding of formulation science. Another research priority, complex APIs, access to GLP-1 peptides. It's going to be a critically important area for the generic drugs. Look for our CRGC workshop next year that'll be completely and totally focused with 2 days on that topics, but thinking about what areas in those products that AI tools can be more effective. Think of computational imagenicity approaches. The oligonucleotides especially have a lot of complexity in the different types of impurities that can be generated, and so new, more quantitative approaches can be very useful there. For other complex dosage forms, where there's limited competition, I think that in vitro BE methods be really important. I think AI tools, quantitative medicine is very critical for that. For inhalation products, predictive models for the drug deposition and the inhalation behavior. Again, we have some research activities on the integration between AI and CFD models to help improve the predictions of those cases. For drug device combination products, again, the current challenge is the user interface. But a lot of that is sort of a little bit qualitative, like how will a user use this device? What will they do with that? I think there's a lot of future in saying, are there AI tools that can look at a device and understand and predict how users might interact with that device in a way that's sort of like a virtual human factor study that explore the different types of things that people might do in a way that might help understand what types of user interfaces are challenges when you look across broad and diverse populations of users. And again, quantitative medicine is really very valuable to the generic industry in having more efficient BE approaches. And to really see the value in AI tools there is, can we build models faster across, and make model building more accessible through AI tools that help develop those models and use them and link them into data to demonstrate their fit for purpose more automatically. And so if you think just moving toward the future, what's the next 10 years of the generic industry going to look like? Complex generics are going to be a bigger part of both the things that we review as FDA and the things that you as the generic industry are developing. So we encourage thinking about how you interact with FDA around those. The Center for Complex Generics is a critical part of that attribute. And thinking about how AI tools can be involved in helping develop generic versions of those complex products. That'll be an area where if you can get ahead of your competition through those uses, the big advantages from there. I think another 10 years, quantitative medicine and the ability to predict the results of human studies without doing them is part of making drug development more efficient. And so there's a range of applications of AI across that in terms of the data that's needed, developing models. But again, the goal in AI is, can you develop models faster? Can you use the AI to curate data sets and then test models against those larger data sets? Really having AI feed and accelerate the development of quantitative medicine approaches in a way that maybe now is limited by the very small number of people who can actually do and implement the quantitative medicine approaches. If you want to hire, I want to hire people who do this, it's hard to find them. You have to train them, in many cases, we have to train people to do this. And so sometimes you might think that the impact of quantitative medicine is limited by the availability of the people who can do this. If AI can accelerate that and make people more productive, that really increases the value of this field immensely. For other products, the non-complex generics that still make up a big chunk of the generic industry's products, think about other ways that can AI help understand some of the key challenges there? Thinking about future on understanding non-Q1Q injectables, understanding, a broader understanding of formulation, safety, and sameness for injectable products. I think one thing that sort of struck me recently is that because in the generic space, we asked that most or almost all generic injectables be Q1, Q2 to the brand product. We've really, in some sense, lost the expertise about what formulation differences really should be essential or non-essential there, because everything has to be the same. So I haven't had to build up the understanding about what types of differences might not be as clinically significant and can lead to broader competition. And so thinking about how AI tools can understand more broadly about formulation sameness in the injectable space is something that, as you want to move to a future where there's more allowances for differences, what's the scientific data that can support that and still result in an efficient regulatory process? And another one, I think just recently our center director posted about a recent drug repurposing example. And I think this is an area where, just how the pharmaceutical system and environment in the US is structured really is that the financial rewards are for submitting new products and new drugs. And if you find a new use for an older product, there's not a clear system to get that effectively into the environment. And so hopefully in the future, AI tools, real-world evidence help develop an understanding of products that may be able to be evaluated efficiently for other uses. And then that can provide, again, broader use for the manufacturing capacity and safe and effective products that the generic industry is approving can lead to their broader use in different cases. And so I think this is something to be watching in the next 10 years as a place where AI is going to be intersecting with the generic industry in a little bit different way, as it potentially can expand the use of different products. But again, this is a challenging application to do this, and generate evidence of safe and effective use is not a trivial problem. And so with that, my conclusion is AI is going to be transformative to the generic industry, especially because the generic industry, it's a very lean industry. The FDA review staff that support that, we are also a very lean and efficient group of people. And we are the people who really need highly effective AI tools to continue to supply that value to the American public. And so just closing here with a few of my predictions is, AI tools will make FDA assessments become more consistent. Just because it's easier to ensure that, am I saying something that's consistent with what I should be saying in a more broad way when you have these text-based tools. Then quantitative medicine tools will be easier to develop and hopefully be more broadly used over the next few years. That if there's something that can be predicted, we ought not to do clinical studies when it's when there's a prediction a reliable prediction that can be made. I think right now, sometimes for the generic industry, it's more affordable to do a human clinical study than to pay to develop a model, because modeling is limited by some factors. Either it's FDA uncertainty. If you accelerate model development, then you'll choose what the appropriate pathway is there. Complex generics are going to be an even more important part of the industry, and this is a case where, again, there's opportunities for AI tools that help develop those more complicated formulations where there's not so much traditional understanding of tablets, capsules, injectables in the generic industry or in the formulation community broadly. And we hope that also as FDA, the industry's use of AI helps lead to higher quality submissions, reduces common deficiencies. FDA staff, we do posters all of the time at different meetings that talk about common deficiencies. It's not a secret. FDA doesn't keep those a secret. Hopefully someone, either you as your company or providers, will sort of take that and say, look, here's things that FDA, common problems that FDA finds, have your AI tool check your submission before you submit it, and don't make those common errors. Hopefully that's a hallmark of the AI future that makes the whole system work better. And with that, look forward to the rest of our workshop, and thank you all very much.